And if you all would please mute, that would be lovely as well. Thank you.
Are you sharing the screen right now because it disappeared?
It's coming up right now.
Oh, okay.
We should also note that we will be sharing the slides as well. So you will get a copy of the slides as well.
All right. And here we go. Welcome, everyone, to Sowing the Seeds of God's Work, Marketing Discoveries for Small and Medium Churches. Gail touched a little bit upon it at the beginning of our time together, of what we'll be doing. And so we've moved through an introduction, and we're going to do a little bit more, as well as we're going to go through and talk about audience identification, website close reads, using social media, creating a marketing plan, and then there will be time for questions and final tips and takeaway at the end. So, Gail started to introduce herself, and Gail, would you like to more formally introduce yourself to the folks on our call today?
Sure. So I'm Gail Liebert. My husband and I worship at St. James in Glastonbury and have for the last 30 years or so, a few years. I have, over the last 25 years, been a consultant with the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, doing vestry retreats, working with parishes in transition, and really being blessed and amazed by the amount of talent and enthusiasm and faith there is in our diocese. Throughout my career, I have done marketing. I've managed television advertising sales. I worked in retailing for a long time, and I also was the publisher of the Hartford Business Journal. So I love marketing and advertising and communication, and I'm excited to share some tips with you today.
And I'm Sarah Woodford. I think I've been at my job now for 4 months now, the canon for communications and media here at the Episcopal Church in Connecticut. And prior to my time with ECCT, I have 10 years of experience in campus ministry and nonprofit communications. So, sowing the seeds. The reason that Gail and I chose this title was from the scripture passage. And as we move into our time together, I'm wondering if I can have someone read this passage from Mark. So feel free to unmute, and the first person who goes for it, it's all yours.
He taught them many things by parables, and in his teaching said, "Listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so that they did not bear grain. Still other seeds fell on good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, some 100 times. Then Jesus said, 'Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear.'"
Thank you so much. So the reason that Gail and I chose this particular passage is twofold. So the first is it starts to help us think about audience, and especially the way different folks are going to be coming to your parish, coming to your social media, your website. And folks are on different faith journeys. So you can see from this graphic here, folks have different ways of being and are curious about the faith. And then from that moment, we also were just like, well, you know what? This also is a parable about thinking about where people are, and what church marketing does, and well, any marketing is, it meets people where they are so they can become in better connection and closer connection with you. And so from that, we also started thinking about audience, because not only do we have to think about faith audience and where people are in their faith journey, but we also have to think about generations as well, because right now in the church, we have quite a few generations who are interacting with our media, with our websites. And so that's what we're going to move into. And I think this is something that keeps on coming back over and over again. There are currently 5 different generations right now within our parishes, within our pews, that we need to be thinking about and learning about how they consume media and how they think about their faith. So Gail, take it away with audience.
So the mantra that I learned early on in my marketing career is to make sure you're identifying your audience. And the mantra is this: successful marketing happens when you are reaching the right people with the right message, the right number of times. And so identifying your audience is really important. Now, we've got 5, as Sarah said, 5 different generations. When I was selling television advertising, there were really 3. There was the 18 to 24, there was 25-54, and then there was 55 plus. There were not 5, there were only 3. And so now we've become much more sophisticated in the way that we identify these 5, excuse me, generations. Now, let's just be honest and say that this information are just that. They're generalizations. There are always going to be outlanders in each grouping. And some of you may not identify with your group, and some of you may totally identify with your group, and probably most of us will be in the middle. So the 5 generations are the builders, who are age 79 and plus. And when you think about what they like in marketing, it's really in-person, free internet, because that's where they grew up. The boomers, who are 60 to 78, really like a mix because they grew up in direct mail, email. They like face-to-face. Most of all, I'll speak for myself and say, we value feeling young. Yes, we do. Next is Generation X, which is 45 to 59. And they value a mix of old and new media, because they just grew up on the edge of social media happening. Then we move to Generation Y, which is 30 to 44. They like speed, they like succinctness, and they're very used to social media. And then you have Gen Z, which is 14 to 29. A couple of things significant about Gen Z. One is they grew up in a global community. They can reach out to Haiti, to Australia, to New Zealand, to anywhere they want to. And they know that. And that makes them very unique. In addition to that, often I hear our churches saying that they want to reach the families. They want to reach the moms. And in Connecticut right now, the average first-time mom, the average age is 28 years old. So those new moms are really in this Gen Z, bordering on Gen Y. If you go to the next slide, we have a couple of other criteria that may help you think about these folks. And it may be helpful for you. This is what helped me, is to think of a person in these groups. So for example, in the builders, I think of my Aunt Jean, who's 86. And she, would not do internet, would not do social media, but she loves to be engaged on the phone, and she loves to get mail. The boomers, I think of myself, limited resources, very work-centric. I think that I go to Gen X and I think of my daughter, and my daughter is also independent. She was really she liked to do whatever she wanted to do, and very interactive as well. Gen Y is my nephew and niece, and they were raised at a time when things were economically stable, and the growth of the online community was just happening. And then Gen Z, I think of my granddaughters, and they were raised during the Great Recession and during some turbulent times in our society. So think about how we would reach each one of these generations. The TV and movies and the learning formats, I won't go through all of them, but they really help us craft a language, again, the right message going to the right people. They help us craft the messages that will be meaningful to the whatever specific generation that we want to reach as we become thoughtful about that. So I would just ask you the question, who are you trying to reach with your marketing? And it's interesting. I suspect some of you would say, everyone. We want to reach everyone. And we will reach everyone. But who do you really want to reach? Because everyone isn't necessarily the most effective way. Starting out that way isn't the most effective way to use your time and your resources. So I would encourage you to think about which generation would you like to reach? And then how does that impact the message that you have? So Sarah, if you'll switch to audience identifiers. So there they are, all our audience. Who would they be? So we would identify the audience similar to the chart. We would identify them age. We would identify that gender and being sensitive to the gender issues that are in our world today. We would identify them as what type of habits do they have? What is their use of media? And, how do they get their information? Thinking about geography. Are we trying to reach people who only come in person? Or are we trying to reach people online? And then the last part, which we talked about before, is where are they in their spiritual journeys? Are they the rocky ground? Are they the scorched ground? Are they the fruitful ground? Who are they and what are their identifiers? And then lastly, some information about the demographics. And I think it's important to note who we're drawing from. As a church, I would suggest that we are pretty local in the people we want to reach, that our best, our most fertile soil, if you will, is really the people that are local. And so if we look at Connecticut, where is the abundance in order for us to reach out if we're trying to reach new people? And so you see the demographics, the percentage, the age breakdowns, and also the ethnicity breakdowns. And I think sometimes churches kind of give themselves a bad rap because they feel badly they're not reaching people that they want to reach, when in fact, the percentages of the demographics are. I would encourage you to do some Googling on the state website. That's where these came from. And you can find your own town or your surrounding towns' specific demographics, which again may help you be thoughtful about who you're trying to reach and what your audience might look like. So I'm a visual person and I love the images of, rather than talking about the Gen Zs and the Gen Xs and the boomers, let's visually think about who our audience is and what messages we would like to tell them. So moving to the next slide, our goal in marketing is to really educate people. People love to be educated, and if you look back on the chart, that's a feature of some of the gens. And we also want to involve people. We want to let them know what's going on. And so how do we communicate those education and involvement? And so we've created this slide with 8 different ways that churches communicate. I suspect you find some that you are doing, some that you are doing well, and some that maybe you're not doing well and would like to do better. And so we offer these just to remind ourselves how many different ways there are to communicate. So let's match them up. And I think to the point of making sure that we're being efficient in our time and our resources. So the Gen Zs, you know, they would probably research a church on the website. They would probably go to some social media, not necessarily Facebook, but maybe Twitter or Instagram. And they would love us to text them when we met them for the first time, so that we could keep connected. Gen Y, what would they want to do? Well, certainly they would definitely go. They're a research group, so they would love to do that. And they would probably also like the social media aspect of it as well. Now, if you move down to the boomers, you know, they're going to want a little bit of social media, a little bit of newsletter, a little bit of local media, and they would be happy with that. And then the builders, well, they want the phone call, and they're going to pick up the Sunday bulletin, and they may read the newsletter. So you can see how different groups have different ways that we communicate to them. So having said all of that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah, and she's going to talk about websites.
Great. Thank you so much, Gail. And yeah, so in this section, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Gail has been speaking about regarding audience and how you can take those meta conversations that we're having and ideas and start to pull it into things like your website, like social media. So website close reads. He was a former colleague, but he's very much still involved with the Diocese of Connecticut. The Reverend Matt Handy has said before, your website is now the front door of your church. And this is especially true for Gen X, Millennial, which is also Gen Y, and Gen Z. And so I love that visual, and I love thinking about that too. It's like, this is your digital presence, and how do you make sure that you are being authentic and also being welcoming, and what your website looks like and how folks can navigate your website. And so just one thing to think about, you know, as you move to a website close read, which is looking at your website and seeing where you can improve or where you might need some design help, is that you have an internal audience, which this is parishioners who come to the website to get information about events, and, you know, parishioners who come to the website to get information about services. And then you also have external. So these are visitors who are looking for a church to attend. Maybe they're new to town or visiting a town and they want to go to church, and your church is the first one that pops up. And there's also clergy or potential staff members considering a position. So those are some things to think about, internal and external audiences. And, you know, and this is just components of an effective website. As Gail has said too, that, you know, this is marketing for small to medium-sized churches. And we know that you might have a staff of one, a quarter-time staff, or a group of volunteers, or one volunteer. But the things that are really making the components of an effective website, the concrete ones, are to have a homepage that has images and text that capture the authenticity and spirit of your parish, and about us, which, you know, who your staff is, or who a contact person is, or persons are, for information, and easy directions to get to your parish. And also something around worship times and events, so that they are up to date and you have an event calendar, because it's not terribly helpful to people if they come and look at your website in July and you still have Advent information on your homepage, or in the prominent position on your website. And nice add-ins, like if you have the capacity, or if someone comes into your church who like has the energy for it, you know, are things like sermon archive and the live stream page, which, you know, is a great place for people to come and visit and get the flavor of the preaching of the place, and also the flavor of the worship on a Sunday morning, and a donation page, and that's so folks can donate online if your parish uses this. But one thing is to be sure that it's monitored. So if folks are donating, make sure that on the back end, wherever those donations go, someone is checking for those things. As well as, an education page. And, this is a place where you can talk about the importance of the liturgical year. Think about those folks who, the faith-seeking folks. And, or if it's a place where your parish has particular traditions that you're proud of, that would be a good place to do that as well. And things like this, like the education components, can also be a place on your homepage. And so we'll see an example of that a little later on. And one thing that I've been noticing when folks are contacting me about websites is the first thing I hear is, we need to change everything about our website. And again, changing everything about your website takes time, takes energy, and can be expensive. So before even going to that place, I want you all to ask yourself these questions before editing. That, like, what makes our church community special and authentic? Does this come across in the visuals and language of what your website looks like right now and reads? And do your mission and core values come across in the visuals and language? And also, what do we want visitors and potentially new audiences to know about our church? And when you answer that question, make sure it's on your website. And also, it's really good to think about how your current community is using your website, if they are. And if they are, like, what could make it easier for them? And in one of our fellow parishes, they have a lot of snowbirds who go south for the winter. And just in having a conversation with the senior warden there, they realized, oh, if I have a live stream on my page, I don't have to lose my snowbirds. So that's like a concrete example. There's others, but just like think about that too, of like how folks are using your website, who are part of your community already. And also to think about what parts of our website need regular updating. Going back to, if you are a staff of one, a staff of none, and depending on that, maybe your website doesn't have 10 pages. Maybe it only has the pages that I just suggested to you in the previous slide. So it's really important to think about, like, we have this, how do we maintain this? And to make sure that you have a point person or a team of volunteers that have this. And whoever is doing this updating has the documentation so they can do the documenting. Because one of the things that I'm seeing pretty frequently, and also this is something I'm moving through with the diocesan website, is folks have been in charge of it, have not told people how to update a calendar or make a change on the back end. And so when a new person comes in, they have to figure that all for them all by themselves. And folks we don't have time. And so if you have those things documented already, you don't have to spend the time figuring out how to do the thing. You actually have the steps in order to do the thing. And then another thing is just, again, our worship times and special events are regularly updated and placed in an easy to findable place, because that's another really important thing. If folks are wanting to come, make sure that they're coming at the right time. Or if you have events, that the events are updated so people are showing up at your parish at the appropriate times. And this is just a more meta version of the effective elements of a church website, and that it communicates your community's mission, vision, and authenticity in both language and visuals, and that it's easy to use. So like folks who are coming to look for key information can find it quickly. And as I've said, it has up-to-date events, calendars, and service times. And you'll hear me repeating that a lot, because that's actually one of the biggest things I'm noticing across the diocese that doesn't happen. And so that's why there's so much repetition of it. And that it's easy to access on both desktop and mobile phone. And what I mean by that is, like, folks consume online media in different ways where you have a lot of, I mean, and I feel like boomers are both and a little bit but from boomers up, folks will use desktops and, and some boomers will do it too, but definitely Gen X down accesses a lot of information on their mobile phone. And so it's really important that your website looks good on your desktop as well as your mobile phone. And if you have more questions around that, you can reach out to me and we can talk through, what that means. And that means making sure that your visuals look good both on a large screen and a small screen, and that your text looks good as well. Because sometimes when text shrinks, it does really strange things where you have indentations where you shouldn't be having indentations. And then again, thinking about accessibility, like is your website accessible for folks who are colorblind or have other visual needs? And one thing that you can help folks who are colorblind is just making sure that there is high contrast in your website. So if you even look on our page, the black on the white, like folks can see that. And and it's again that it's easy to maintain with the help of one person or a group of volunteers. And so, and I thought we could look at some website examples. And let me quickly. Yes, I agree, Don. I just looked up the tag, and yeah, the worst advertisement is a parish in an out-of-date website. Yes, you're not doing yourself any favors. And so I've been giving you some like theory and a few concrete things, but I wanted to show you some examples from around the diocese that I think really embody this well. So the first one is Trinity Episcopal Church Collinsville. And what I like about that is it has a clear example of a navigation bar. So if you see up here, it's home, about, worship, serve, learn, give. And so if you're coming to a website, you see that, you know what those things are. And so you don't have to guess what each one of those things is about. And the photo, and like a lot of folks, there's people in photos, folks respond to a lot more than still images, but you can still do really great still life images that like evoke a feeling or evoke a spirit. And the church building with the snow on it is just so lovely, and there's something very peaceful and lovely about this image. So this is a great way that you can showcase your building, showcase your parish in a way that's attractive to folks. And it's also a great example of having church information and services easy to access. So I'm going to go to their website right now so we can scroll around a little bit. And I will be doing a new share with you so we can take care of that. Great. So here we are on the Trinity Episcopal Church Collinsville website. And it's also nice too, because you see here, it's very clean branding where you have the yellow and the white on it with, their logo might be too glib of a word to use, but it's just also just really lovely, simple and clean. And here's their mission statement. With God's love, we joyfully welcome and nourish all. With God's help, we serve our community and beyond. And so this is still up, but this is kind of a nice place too, where you can talk about what's going on, like Lent, Holy Week, and Easter. We just finished up with, and Easter services are here, so folks knew about that, as well as we have some really great ways to learn about what is Maundy Thursday. So this is a nice way that you can have that information right up on your homepage. And here's a way you can view the Collinsville calendar of services. And right here, it's join us Sundays at 9 a.m. in our sanctuary. And they also have it put out where you can go to the Book of Common Prayer, you can go to the bulletins and greetings, and you can do more with the worship to us. So going back to the slide, so that's a way that you can do it, that I think pulls together what I've been talking about in some concrete ways. So the next example is St. Paul's on the Green in Norwalk. And again, this is right, you could see the events calendar, even in the screenshot, is like right up in your face. And we'll go and we'll see more of that when we get there. And it's consistently updated, it's easy to view, and it also, you can see that the church mission is right there and is an important part. And again, it's another great example of a navigation bar. And so see here, when I was putting this presentation together, Holy Week was a big part of it. And you see that Holy Week is one of the things that you can put in the navigation bar. So if you have the time and space and energy to highlight something that you need to highlight, you can use the navigation bar to do that. And so let's go and scroll around on their page a little bit. And so see here we have these scrolling images here where, this, even though there aren't people in it, this one's lovely. So you get a feel of who's there with the palms, and you get some group shots. So like folks can really see like who you are and what you're about. So it's kind of nice to have something like that on your front page. And here again, events calendar, up to date, things are happening on April 14th, Sunday Eucharist. And so folks can see that. And there are also places where if you want, you can have something for your e-news. And there's places, and so here they have a place to give, you have a place for sermons, you also have a place to worship online. So this is another example of how you can put all of those elements together. And then last but certainly not least is St. Mark's in Mystic, Connecticut. And I also find this to be a great example of a photo that captures the spirit of the community. St. Mark's does have a very burgeoning youth population, and to have this, them in the tree right by the iconic red door is just kind of a wonderful, way to use this. Just a minute, Jacqueline, what's going on? Jacqueline, are you muted? Sorry, I can't hear you right now. And so let's attend this later on, and I'll, at the end, we can talk about this again. So be sure to raise your hand there too. And so again, this St. Mark's, you also have a great way to share, keeping social media subtle but prominent. And I really appreciate that, we have this great use of get direction in this like red button. So here, let's go ahead and take a look here. All right, so here we are with St. Mark's, and welcome to those who have, just joined us. We're looking at websites right now and seeing how the theory that I talked about is playing out in some of the websites around our diocese. And again, this is a wonderful way, like you have this very pithy, this beautiful picture, iconic red door, a pithy way to say sharing God's abundance. That's what Mystic is about. And, and I love how at St. Mark's, we invite you, no matter who you are, to come and seek to share and grow, to serve and give, and to discover God's abundance with us. Just, again, a lovely way to get people to start to feel the spirit of who you are. And so, again, you have great worship with us at St. Mark's right on the homepage. And it's either in person folks can get directions, or you can join online. And then again, too, they have their newsletter. It's easy to sign up. But then again, I just really appreciate, I hope my bar isn't, let's get the bar out of the way a little bit, but here, just get directions in red so folks don't have to guess. Great. And so on to using social media.
So if the website is the front door of your church community, social media is really the kitchen door or the garage door. It's the door that people come into to interact with you. A website is not necessarily meant to be interactive, though it can be, and successful ones are. Simple ones are not. But social media is the place where you really can build relationships with people, and people can really get to know you and your personality. But they can also ask you questions. They can also react with a little thumbs up or a heart. And so it's a really, really great way to engage people, especially those people who are using social media more than perhaps other media. So there are lots of different social media platforms, as you all know. Typically, the social media that is used for churches are the four we have here: Facebook, which is really, steeped in the history, really the beginner of it all. Instagram, which is about images and video. Twitter, which is now called X, famous for their very short number of characters, and a lot of engagement. And then, of course, YouTube, which is all about video, how to do things, get information gathering, and being visual. If we flip to the next slide, we notice that most adults in the US, and this is a survey from 2023, 83% use YouTube, 68% use Facebook, 47 Instagram, and then down from there. And so while many of our parishes have their services on YouTube, it is also a great way to do instructional video, videos choir, video about what's Maundy, Thursday, all of that type of thing. And certainly Facebook is very dominant in this space, especially with churches. So looking at the next slide, my dad would say that marketing is like housework. The more you do, the more you have to do. And it's true. The more you create, the more you have to keep it updated and you have to keep responding. So we would recommend that if you haven't done social media at all, do one and do it right. And we would recommend that you choose Facebook, which seems to be the most universal and the most used. So if you are in that mode, take a look at Facebook and other folks. Important elements here: to be consistent with posting. Doesn't mean you have to post every day, post every week or every other week, but be consistent. I was on a website this afternoon doing some research, and that person hadn't posted since 2021. Well, they're probably not, they're doing, something's going on there. So being consistent and posting really is important. Make sure you're asking questions and engaging with the audience, and answering questions when they have them. So questions are great. Often people will ask, what time is your service? Even though you have it on your front page, they want to know, do you have childcare? Make sure that you answer those questions in a prompt way. And you can also ask questions to engage, like, what's your favorite place to pray? Or how did you see God this week? There's lots of different ways to engage on Facebook using questions. Encourage your best fans, your parish members and friends, to follow and like and share your social media. That's where the audience and that's where the community builds. And it's awesome. Make sure, we talked about on the website authenticity and photos, really important for those who are visual. And I would just add video in there as well. Make sure you're spreading the word about the ways your church gives back. Make sure let people know that you do have a food pantry or a soup kitchen or a ministry to Haiti. People get engaged because of, think back to those Gen Zers who are really interested in global. Make sure that people know how you give back. And then lastly, share posts from others, whether it's partner churches in your own town, Episcopal Church of Connecticut, the Episcopal Church, the National Church site and Facebook posts or social media posts, Camp Washington, and then other ministries that your community supports. It's always good to keep spreading the word around and helping others. Sarah, I'm
Right.
passing it back to you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just quickly talk about some of the different uses of social media and the audiences that are connected with it. And again, the information too, you can see with active users. Yes, YouTube is the one that's used the most, and Facebook is the one who's used the second most. And that's the important thing with using social media too, is all of these platforms are tools. And it's always important because like you don't hammer in a nail with a wrench. You use a hammer. So it's also really helpful to know how a certain platform is used so you can engage with that particular one in a way that will get you engagement. So Facebook is a lot for social networking, and audiences that will frequent that are very much boomers, generations X and Y, and millennials. And just, for context too, the millennial generation, this is when Facebook first came about, and they were the first generation that really engaged with it. And so you're not going to get a lot of Gen Z on Facebook because they feel like that's kind of where the old people are, which is kind of true. But, just so if you really are targeting Gen Z, Facebook's not the place. But our church is full of boomers, generations X, and millennials. And so it's a great place to, especially for us, to in Connecticut, to engage like a captured audience. Instagram is for social sharing that focuses on photos. And so, the typical example of that is, a well-presented meal. But it's a place where you can, if you see something beautiful like a sunset, or so it is very visually based. And so it's very important to focus on, things that have like authentic, they feel authentic, there's emotion in them, there's good presentation. And, some boomers use this, but like the concentration is very much generations X, Y, and Z. And Z will use Instagram a lot more even than, millennials or Generation X. And then Twitter is or what, as it's now called, X, is used for microblogging. Especially journalists will use Twitter to make sure that they're staying in contact with each other, sharing information. So it's a very short way. And for those of you who don't know what blogging are, it's kind of the digital version of the newspaper's opinion piece. And so microblogging is very, very short. And I'm forgetting right now, is it 250 characters, Gail?
Yeah, 280. 280. Yep.
280. So it's very, very short. And generations X and Y and millennials will use this. And as Gail was saying, earlier, there are outliers, and I'm a millennial. And as you can see, I don't use Twitter. So example of that right there. And then YouTube is really about like multimedia videos, as Gail was saying. You can find everything from, someone's wedding to how-to videos, and a lot of churches have used it for live streaming and archiving their past services. And this is a place where folks from all generations really can get to. And I've actually, it's been kind of wonderful. I've actually talked to some of our folks in our diocese in their 70s and 80s who know how to navigate their way around too. So, which I think is kind of wonderful. And so this is just, again, a few do's and don'ts. It's
Sarah,
really
Sarah, can I interrupt you before you get there? Jillian was making some good points in the chat about
great.
some of the specific channel media outlets and how it's constantly changing. And you're so right, Jillian. This is the one challenge with marketing and media is that it's changing very, very quickly. And so it's very true. You have to kind of do your homework.
Yeah, I've never found a use for church Twitter on the parish level, except in general convention years. But and even now, very few of my church people are still using Twitter as far as where they're using Twitter, but they're also on Blue Sky or finding some other place because there's so much that's problematic around X now that Musk owns it. So
great, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for what it's worth too, like the Episcopal Church in Connecticut, we've also moved away from Twitter for those reasons. But and so again, just quickly, here's some do's and don'ts of social media. Like, it's really helpful to have a planning calendar so you can keep that consistency. And yeah, and when possible, post on multiple sites. Things like Facebook are connected with Instagram, so you can do cross-level posting, but just again, make sure that the content that you're posting works in both spaces. Because remember, going back to like the ways we use tools, and then it's good to have an action step. And it's also great because it's called social media. And so being social, making those connections, make sure that you're linking to others on social media. So one of the things we do on the ECCT page is, so Bishop Jeff is, post something on his Facebook page, and we make sure that we link back to him with that when we repost it. And, and if he's at some conference, we also tag the conference. If he's with, one of another bishop who has like a visible Facebook profile, of a public Facebook profile page, we tag them as well. So that's kind of a way that you can link others to other social media. And yeah, it's also good to review engagement results and see what's working. So one of the concrete examples I can give you there is one of the things that, me and Kayla, our digital storyteller, noticed starting in November, is that folks on our audience on Facebook really responded to Greg Farr. And whenever he was there and sharing about ECCT history. And so that's how our Did You Know history post came about for Black History Month as well as Women's History Month. And they did really, really well. And so that's a way that you can sort of review engagement and create more from what you learn from that engagement. And, some of the don'ts are, don't post photos of people you don't know. And don't post photos of vulnerable populations. If you have a soup kitchen or a pantry like that, don't post pictures of your guests. And it's a safe church issue, and don't post photos of children or children's names. One of the things I'll give you at the end is we do have a release form that you can give to the parents. But it's really important, not to do that without the parents' express permission. And don't try to do it all yourself. Like, again, this is social media. We do social things together. And, and it's also it's important to be consistent, but also think about when your audience is online. So maybe you have a lot of morning people, so post something in the morning. Maybe people check at lunch. Maybe people check after work or later in the day. So it's also really important to see too when folks are online and engaging with you. And you don't have to post anything and everything. Like going back to what we've been talking about, it's important to be audience specific, and it's also important for your church to be mission specific. So it's, if you need to help, code things, think about whether or not this post goes back to your mission or goes back to an audience you're trying to reach. So that's a way that you can sort of cut down some of that clutter. Great. And before we go to making a plan, let me just check the chat really quickly. Yes, and I think, yeah, conferences and events for X makes sense. Yes, and I agree. The Facebook Business Suite app is really, really helpful. Thank you, Carolyn. Gail, so do you want to take it away for making a plan?
So making a plan. I personally love sticky notes. So this visual gives me just warm and fuzzy feelings. The idea of getting organized with a good pad of sticky notes. Again, I just want to reiterate the idea of getting overwhelmed with this and making a plan too complicated. Make it simple and make it in conjunction with others so that people who are volunteering with you can understand it. And try and make it in a way that you can break up the work and not take on the work and not have one person taking on the work all by themselves. I was on a call last night with a church, and one of the vestry members said, I feel so overwhelmed and discouraged because there's so much to do and I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. And that's not what we want people to feel. And we certainly want to be encouraging to those around us who are volunteering with these communication plans. So make a plan that works for you. Sarah has a way that she does a plan. I have a way that I do a plan. I bet each of you have your own way. We don't have a magic formula here, but we have some suggestions that we hope will make it easy for you. So one of the most important things I think is to step back for a moment. I used to have a boss who used to say, you have to slow down to speed up. And boy, he was right. And I'm a speed upper, and he loved to slow down. We used to rub edges all the time. But I believe that you do need to think about where you are now and where you would like to
I was
go.
going to ask if you would like me to bring over dinner Monday night.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Period.
Sarah, did we lose you?
No, I'm still here. Here,
Oh,
let's
okay,
see.
good. So moving on, keep track of where you are now, whether it's the number of followers or the number of people who are subscribed to your email, because you'll get encouraged by seeing the excitement of moving forward. Again, keep it simple. If it's a sticky pad that you're going to use to create your plan, go for it. If it's an Excel spreadsheet, use it. If it's a more complicated planner, use it. If it's a calendar, physical calendar you're going to write on, go for it. Use what works for you. Again, take the time to determine your target audience. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. So try it. Try a new target audience, or try an audience that you think you would like to go for, and experiment. Ask people in your congregation who they think the target audience is. It's not scientific. I mean, there's no right answer. So just decide who you'd like your target to be and work with that. And then identify who the most effective way to reach that audience is. You know, the idea of the target audience is efficiency. So in being efficient with your funds and the hours in the day and your focus, it's really helpful to do that. And then again, a visual is creating a calendar or spreadsheet of upcoming events and news. Many people say, well, we don't have much going on, you know, in the summertime, so we're not going to post anything, or we're not going to. And when you sit down and actually look at what you have going on, there's probably a few things that you'd forgotten about. And so creating that calendar really will give you some good ideas and help you craft a plan. Master tips. Setting deadlines. So I was a publisher in a former life, and I will tell you that when I set deadlines, I hit it. When I didn't set deadlines, things would float along. So I encourage you to set deadlines for yourself and again, monitor and track how things are going. Try new things and adjust as needed. If it doesn't work, just scrap it and move on to something else you want to try. Engage others in sharing the work and ask them their advice and feedback. The best way I've found to get volunteers is to ask for somebody's advice. Can you tell me, what do you think about this? How do you like that? What do you think we should do about this? And all of a sudden, people are engaged and willing to help. I love to allow photos and content to give me ideas of what to write about and what to focus on. I'm a visual person, so that helps me. And if it helps you, please use it. And then once you begin at an easy place to make a change, start there and you'll get your momentum going. And look, we're back to the parable. The way we'd like to kind of finish this up is to ask someone to read this passage again, and then we'd love to hear from you how you think what you've taken away from this and how you think you will get started in using the information.
So yeah, so the first one to unmute to read, it's all for you.
I'm at St. Andrews over in Madison, and our website needs some perking up. It's very plain right now, so definitely some great ideas. Thank you for this webinar.
Great. And Louise, speaking of volunteers, will you read the Mark 22 through 9? I know you're on your iPhone. Can you get to it? Could you read
Sure,
that?
yeah, it's right here, no problem. You
Awesome.
want me to read the whole thing again? Okay.
Yeah, just so we can.
He taught them many things by parables, and in his teaching said, listen, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly, but because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, so that they did not bear grain. Still others fell on good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, some 100 times. Then Jesus said, whoever has ears to hear, let them hear.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you all. And yeah, I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to stop the recording. Or no, I'll keep the recording going if that feels good, so we can share like what seeds you now want to sow, and what things you are doing well that you want to tell other people about, and any questions we have with the presentation. Oh, there you all are.
Hi, I'm Jackie from Trinity Episcopal Church in Hartford, and I was interested in how to grow our audience, and I found this information very helpful in that I think the big question looming for me is which audience, or maybe two, that we are very interested in growing. My initial response was, well, everybody. But now I realize we really should kind of key in on what demographic are we really looking to encourage to come, and then build our communication and marketing around that. So I'm looking forward to getting back to the vestry and others to plan that out and ask the question.
Great.
Great. Um,
Okay. That might sound weird, but it occurred to me we have a pretty nice online newsletter, and that it might be worthwhile to actually, this sounds so retrograde, print it out, because we have quite a number of older congregation members who do not use online things at all. And so I think I'd like to try an experiment and have a few. They tend to be clumped around our 8:30 a.m. service on Sundays, and see what the response is and adjust accordingly, as you suggested.
Excellent idea. I love that.
Hi. I don't know why my picture doesn't show up, but trust me, I'm gorgeous. I work with Louise, actually. We're the communications team at St. Andrews. And one thing that always is hard for me, and I really appreciated some of your advice today, is we're both the age we are, and reaching out, like even with Instagram, which I do go on Instagram and I follow, and we have asked our vestry if we can start putting things on Instagram. They have not gotten back to us. They're a little hesitant on the subject because of putting things out there that may not be appropriate. So actually, and it's a generational thing. So much of this is generational. And getting I almost feel like we need always a multi-generational communications team, so that I can understand what someone who's at a very different point in their life than I am. We send our newsletter out by email, but even I don't consider email my first choice for how to communicate to people. So I'm really aware, and we do Facebook, or Louise does. She's really good at it. But moving forward and being able to catch everyone else is hard. And it's hard for me to figure out, and it's hard for me to know how to go about it. Like, I understand Instagram, but knowing what's going to catch people's interest, knowing what's going to make them want to follow what we put out there is, I mean, how do I get this information?
Well, a few ways you can do it is you can contact my digital storyteller, Kayla Collins, and get her advice. She's Gen Z, and so it's good to ask folks in that generation where you can. And if you don't have a starting point within your parish, talk to Kayla. And another thing is look around Instagram, look at what the Episcopal Church is doing, look at what the Episcopal Church at Yale is doing. Like look around, look at what Canterbury Cathedral is doing. So like take the time to look at what other churches are doing, and that can help too.
What they're doing on Instagram.
Yes.
Okay.
And
okay, yeah.
Those are starting points, and then see what engagement or not or non-engagement you get from those. So you're in a place of like fact finding right now.
Okay. Thank you. And
You're welcome.
thank you.
So I want to get to folks who have had their hands raised. Thank you so much for being patient. Is it Gillian or Jillian?
Jillian.
Jillian, lovely.
One thing is if you have a staff person, even part-time, who's doing communications, or a really dedicated volunteer team or head volunteer, there's the Episcopal Communicators Professional Group, and its membership is based on the individual, not on the parish, unfortunately. But if one person on your team is a member of Episcopal Communicators, they have a Facebook group, they have a listserv, and they have awesome continuing education kinds of things. Their conference is coming up next week in Portland, Maine. I think it's their 50th anniversary or something like that. So for those of you who are closer to the professional side of things, that's a really good information source. I'm kind of interested in the kind of maybe a vintage seeds, heirloom seeds, similar to the previous question, and that a lot of my parishioners still actually read the newspaper, like on paper. And so I'm wondering, communications, the two challenges we have is, or many, but two of them are developing media contacts and kind of getting our stories out in good in media, legacy media formats, and then also helping our lay people really think about not just basically having a flyer with the who, what, when is this event and everything, but really doing more storytelling, which is very much what my sense is works well for younger generations and also people who aren't connected with the church. So what are some good resources to help lay people? What are some good models of churches that are doing that well? Or what are some good resources to help lay people move from kind of okay, our Lenten luncheons are every Monday at 12:30 from blah, 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 to telling the story about how wonderful it is that we have this program and who it supports and how much fun it is to come to it and that kind of thing.
So Jillian, are you talking about doing this storytelling for the older people or for the younger people?
Mainly in our population, Stonington, older, middle to old.
Yeah.
Yeah, young families is a whole nother nut to crack, but I'm just talking about our neighbors here in the greater Stonington area who skew a little bit older than your average suburb.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to answer right now, but if you have any resources you can put in the chat or.
That's what so Gail, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I just actually was having this conversation with someone this morning and I need to go back and pull up the link. So
It's funny that you say this because at our communications meeting, my church's communications meeting on Tuesday night, we talked about the idea that we'd done a couple of these great YouTube videos. We did one for the Easter egg hunt. Our youth did them. It was a really fun one. We did a couple for last fall for church school registration. And at the committee meeting, there were older people, and they said, well, we never saw these videos because we're not on YouTube or Facebook. So we thought, gee. So we said, well, we have a screen in our atrium that we could actually play those on after the service or during the service. Again, to message that our internal older population. So I think that I love the idea of how do you reach out to the boomers and the builders, because they do have time and they have curiosity. And I love that idea. So Sarah, you have some links. I love it.
I do, yes. And so I found this one this morning by storydoc.com, and it's skewed towards nonprofits, but I think it's very, very clear, and I think you can make the jump. And it talks about different ways you can tell stories for your congregation. And it also gives you like a really nice pithy way to create a narrative at the bottom. So I think that this might be a good jumping off point too. And just also
Okay.
I have to offer, and just so you all know too, that I'm, within the next few months, I'm going to start communication office hours in the evening. So I will have a Zoom and you can jump on and ask me questions, ask my team questions, and and I will answer, we will answer, and folks on the team on the Zoom can answer as well. And I think too, it would be good for us to do a session on storytelling. And until that time, please reach out to me too, because that's, one of my very strong points is helping, especially religious organizations, tell their stories. And so please use me as a resource. I'm your canon. And, that's, what I'm here for. And I'm so glad that you talked about the Episcopal communicators. And yes, membership is, you do have to pay a bit for that, but actually the Facebook group is free. And that's one of the resources I'm going to post in the chat that I hope you all will be able to open. And if not, you will be getting an email from me. And the Facebook group is great because you can go and, say, like, I mean, this is a little bit too like technical, but like, or not even that, like you can go and say, what are your favorite examples of newsletters? Or how are you proud of Instagram? How are you using Instagram these days? And you'll have other folks who are communicators across the country be able to answer you. So that Facebook page is actually really a helpful one to do. Thank you. Stephen, thank you for your patience. Oh, Steve, where'd you?
He's muted.
Oh no, please unmute Stephen.
I am still muted. Thank you guys so very much. I apologize for that. I lowered my hand, but I stayed muted. So I pastor one of those churches that is in fact, whose website is in fact its worst advertisement. And after nurturing folks along for 2 years, I think we've got some resources that are actually helping us to update that, because you can only do so much as a part-time priest. That said, while much of the information that you all are sharing today is very, very helpful and essential, I'd like to key in on maybe one of the last points that Sarah just mentioned, which is story. Our target market is not easily defined. It certainly can be characterized in terms of demographics, and I'm talking about my particular situation. But really, our target market is best described as a population of people who are either unchurched or unaware of church. They are a population of people who are largely who would probably describe themselves as yearning for some kind of spiritual connection. They might describe themselves as somebody who've heard of Jesus and have heard that something called the Bible exists. But they don't have the foggiest idea of who we are. And some of those lovely websites that you guys shared today which are very typical good Episcopal Church websites, are still kind of living in a place of being who they are as they understand themselves. And they're not going to talk to my kids, much less my grandkids. And so, in addition to all the wonderful information that we are talking about here today, I'm encouraging all of us who are interested in this business to really ponder in a true marketing sense, what does our target market want? What does our target market need? And then how do we, not in the way we think and process, but how do we actually connect in a language that target market can grasp. They are not going to grasp vestries. They are not going to grasp, our church services are bump to bump to bump. That's all good information and needs to all be there. But they need to touch. They need to be touched on the yearning level.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're trying to do, and Lord knows how it's going to come out because now it's a committee, but what we are trying to do with God's help is really develop a marketing strategy and a messaging platform. Currently, our focus is on the website that actually talks about who we are, doesn't shy away from the fact that we are people of Jesus, because that's it. That's what we got to sell. Is the love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And to do that in a way, though, that touches the yearning that the non-church and the unchurched have. I mean, I'm in a small town. I'm in Roxbury, and it's a small town of a variety of people, many of whom are hedge fund managers and extremely wealthy. But they also have families, and there's a lot of kids have moved there. And so, how do you connect with these people? Because they don't go to church. They don't know what a church is. They know it's the little white steeple in the center of town. That's cute. So anyway, just a word, just some observations, suggestions, and I see a lot of churches that try to identify themselves by the lowest common denominator, and that can work, but really I think it's two things. It's one, touching the yearning that we have, and two, not shying away from our core competency. And our core competency is Jesus, who is the Son of God, born, raised, born, died, crucified, rose from the dead, and ascended. And so we need to try to connect those two bits in the media strategies that we develop. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I find myself wondering too is if you know who you are, it makes it easier to reach out to other people, folks as well. And this also just given our first time doing this on Monday, there were questions around, well, how do we bring folks in through events and through events that aren't inwardly church focused, but are actually also, like a trivia night was something that folks did. So how do we meet folks where they are as well? So I think, yeah, there are a few more steps that need to happen. And being curious and learning about what that yearning is, to be able to speak more to it and speak and do more with it. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to share a few, I'm going to share the resource slides with you all, and, God willing, and they will come through. So these are the resource guides. So this has information about the Episcopal communicators. This has information about how to make your media more readable for folks who are colorblind. So just some information around that I hope will be helpful. And then, and let me know, give me a shout if you open it and you need all of these permissions to do a thing.
Nope, that's coming through, Sarah.
Hooray. Thanks be to God. And I'll also email this to participants too, who have popped off or needed to go on to do other things.
The link for me says access to file restricted by your account admin.
So which one was it? The Sowing the Seeds of God's Work, or?
I don't know. It's both of them are just, I just have that message twice, now 3 times, and it doesn't say what the file is.
Frustrating. All right. Well,
Email.
Yep, email will do it then. So great. Well, does anyone else have any questions or comments? And we have a few more minutes.
I just wanted to make one comment. I sent out a chat and I did it by mistake just to one person. And I just wanted to share, as you were talking about figuring out what audience to reach and everything. One thing we found is that, or I feel very much in life, is that many people nowadays are looking for a community. And yes, we're offering them Jesus, the Christian religion, the Christian faith, and how we process that journey. But they want, on top of that spiritual side, the community that a church can offer. And that we get a lot of really good response to any time that we make that a part of our message, that join us as in our community as followers of Jesus.
Mhm.
That's just commentary.
Yeah, and it's good. Thank you.
So as we finish up, does anybody want to share what they're going to do next?
I'm going to reach out to a younger person in our church and I'm going to ask for their help. I love that idea of just reach out for advice on getting going on Instagram type connections with those that are not in my age pool.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Lovely. Well, it's 3:30 and thank you all for taking time on a Friday afternoon to be with us and, sit through our presentation. And also thank you so much for, the commentary along the way, the feedback. We really appreciate it. And yeah, we hope this is helpful. And, there's more to come. As I said, there's office hours. Please reach out to me. Please reach out to our digital storyteller. Please reach out to Gail. And, and so too, that going forward, I am going to be resurrecting the digital ministry network for our communicators so we can continue to have these conversations throughout the year and be able to support each other work that we're doing. So thank you so much again.
Have a good weekend, everybody.